Maybe I should pretend to be Steven Erikson and you ask me the questions. I'll answer them as I think Steven Erikson might answer them.
I mean, oh man, I want to do that. That's all I want to do now.
Let me tell you what a
Steven
current
Erikson
working day is like for me.
and Steven Erikson. Yeah, I'll phrase them all in the South Park voice. Hey, buddy. Okay, well, we're recording and we're all good. And Steven Erikson left me on red and then has not seen the new Zoom link.
That's
So,
rough. Maybe we
it's
should spend
rough.
this time to talk about your feelings, John. You got ghosted by Steven Erikson.
I got ghosted by Steven Erikson, man. It,
Man, you've put so much time and effort into this relationship with Steven Erikson, and it's been all one way so far.
yeah, I have thought about this man too much. I made shirts about a
Oh, you
character.
sure did. Let me
Yeah.
see the whole, let me see the whole shirt. It's my 14th baby. And I just wore stripes like a jerk.
Yeah. Really?
God.
You're not gonna show up to the Malaz cast with a poem?
Well, I should have made like a dragon mask or a bone
So
phone.
you remember the dragon mask and the bone phone.
That's it. Now we've
That's all.
exhausted what I know about Gardens of the Moon. That's it.
Well, let me tell you, here we are. It's the Word Podcast, and we read Gardens of the Moon. We're doing another video on Gardens of the Moon. I've read it 3 times, and with me today is my good friend and editor, Summer Flynn. Hello, Summer.
Hello, John.
And Summer is we're gonna talk about what she remembers, what I remember after 3 times. We're gonna see how much distance is between those 2 points. So, Summer, I want to know, "Gardens of the Moon" by Steven Erikson. What is your first bleh impression?
Words.
Hmm.
Lots and lots of words and lots of descriptions.
Well, that's good. This is the Word Podcast, so
Yeah.
I'm happy. There's so many words. Lots of descriptions. So when you
Lot.
say that, like from an editing standpoint, like I want to know because you work every day with words, with other people's work, and you read a lot too. So when you hit a lot of description, what does that kind of register for you as when it comes across your book in a book?
When it comes across in a published book
Yeah.
with a cult following, I kind of go, huh, because I always wonder how we got here. In other words, pun intended, no one cut those words. No one cut that description of the cliff. Maybe they did. Maybe there were more descriptors than there are now. I don't know, but it always makes me. Descriptions are great. Um, do I feel that perhaps we've described some things too much? I do. I tried to set aside my editor hat and my red pen because I knew going in that this is, a particular kind of fiction and quite epic and high fantasy. So I tried to suspend all of that critical thinking. But I mean, there were times where the frustration definitely took over. I would say it's a humbling read. That's probably my overall impression is humbling.
That's a good way to put it. I think so. So like When, at what points did you notice the frustration kind of taking over?
Page 4, maybe, when it started. And I've mentioned already the cliffs. Those really made an impression because there were, oh, just, really was important that we understood those cliffs. But then I started to notice the pattern of, oh, it's not that those cliffs are important, it's that we're going to describe lots of things a lot, and we're, who needs exposition? The reader will figure it out. So the frustration tipped pretty early for me because I enjoy understanding what's happening in a book, and oftentimes I just had no idea what was happening. And I know that's part of it now. I truly went in blind. My first real exposure at all to Steven Erikson's book was when I worked at the public library. And to pass the time, I worked at the adult fiction desk, so in a city. So right kind of when everyone walked in. And we had this game where a patron would walk in and we'd try to guess what book they were here to check out, or, who they were coming to read. And I have to say, there was a certain kind of person at that point, this was, early 2000s, that would come in and check out Steven Erikson's books. And so I had some
Did they look
preconceived.
like they probably look like this? The
They didn't
sharpie shirt.
necessarily have their own homemade shirts, but I suspect underneath the flannel plaid, there was indeed a homemade Malazan shirt. I suspect so. But what was funny is it was the same people who would come in over and over and check them out, and they were the
Yeah.
most tattered things. And I remember I went to the collection development guy and said, we need some more fantasy books. And it was, no, no, that's part of the experience in reading these. Well, fast forward 25 years, and I go to check out a copy recently to read for this podcast. Same thing. It was in complete tatters, totally different state, different place. The book was completely tattered. So I do have to give it to him that how many people have fans that are that loyal that will go back and read it numerous times, and each time they walk away with, like, new stripes on their uniform. Like, people really get this sense of pride about how many times they've read it, and how many books of the
Right.
series, and it's its own kind of cult following that I would say is pretty unique. I haven't seen I've seen there's been flashes in the pan of books that do that, but as far as one that lasts this long and has such a dedicated, enduring readership is pretty fascinating. But now, having read it, I kind of get the dedication. I get the rereading of it, but that's maybe less because you're drawn to rereading it and more because you just want to pick up more of the story. I get now that one read is kind of like, ha, that's funny. One read, you don't know what happened. Uh, so I guess that now I do understand a little bit more of the return to the text over and over as a means of kind of filling in the rest of the map of the world, so to speak, and the characters, because it's a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like a lot of that kind of that cult following, feel like gets create I feel like it got created because of like um the upcoming books in the series, because there is like in the second one that like I just started a reread of Dead House Gates book 2, and um it's there's so many little things that that Erikson isn't doing in Gardens of the Moon. It's
Mhm.
like Gardens of the Moon, it was almost like completely punk rock, like, and he's like, I don't care, I'm not gonna give context. I mean, I'll give you enough to work with, but like there's certain things where he's like kind of figure it out, and he is trusting the reader, and I think that that's great. But I just feel like in Dead House Gates, there's like a finesse to that
Mm.
almost, where he's like, okay, here I could give a little context in this same sentence, still have it be just as lean, and like because I know
Mhm.
that he likes to write as if it's like a short story, so including like erroneous detail,
Mhm.
which I know with the descriptions you were just saying that all right, might be too much detail at times, but I feel like he definitely has more of a balance with that. and the story gets more interesting. You kind of start thinking what's going to happen. Whereas in book one, it's like it doesn't feel like there's very much like at stake as far as what
Mhm.
this series is about. But I did want to ask you about with the description of setting.
Mhm.
So as far as epic fantasy goes, like how much how much do you read epic fantasy that has this heavy world building aspect to it? Like have you read Tolkien's books?
Only the first one. Part of
Uh,
the first one, actually. I didn't finish it.
the Hobbit or the Fellowship of the
The
Ring?
Hobbit.
The
Hmm.
Hobbit. Okay. Did you have that same kind of feeling when you were doing
Yes.
that? Yeah.
Yes.
No, and I know what you're talking about. And I love this shit. So like I feel like I'm on both sides of the fence here because me personally, I that's when my eyes glaze over.
Hmm.
And I do like a lot of audiobooks. And so like if it's not a character moment, if the character doesn't have something to do with the setting, then I'm like, oh God, I got to rewind it because I missed
Hmm.
how the top of that spire looked.
Right.
on
Was it?
Castle.
Yeah, I need to know the spire. Tell me more.
30-second rewind. The spire. I wasn't, and 30
Right.
seconds. The spire. Anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah. So I have that same kind of feeling where it's like, I get the overwhelm, and I also felt that in the Lord of the Rings.
Hmm.
Um, but then sometimes I will have it where there's a setting in epic fantasy that's described, and I feel like it's almost like a mood thing for me. Like
Hmm.
sometimes I'm in the mood to be in the forest and for you to
Hmm.
walk me through it,
Hmm.
and other times I cannot. Do you ever experience that, like where it's like,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you have to be in the mood. How many times have you gone back and reread something and you think, "Oh, I didn't even catch this before." And I'm not talking about, plot points, but just tone or, thematic elements or something about the characterization or, the complexity of a character. So I do think so much of reading is what the reader brings to the story. And I know that. And so when I go to fantasy, that's why I, try to suspend that a little bit, especially in the last 10 years or so, where I read mainly contemporary fiction in part because I want to know what are publishing houses publishing, who's, what's hot. So it's more of a professional development kind of thing rather
right,
than what is pulling me. So it's good to not do that for a bit and be pulled to something that's not, although, you know, a case could be made that certainly I know he's probably working on something right now, but it's good to stop that and go back a little bit and dip your toe into something that is much more well established. And I'm not really being fair to fantasy at large, because it's not my favorite genre. If I'm in the mood for it, then yes, I'm not often in the mood for it, to be honest, and that's a personal thing. But I tried to attack this in the way of, I'm gonna crack the code. It was almost like a
right.
challenge. You came to me like, you want to read this book? And I was like, no. And then, it became this, well, other people say this is difficult to read because first I did, cursory research, 10 minutes of looking into this, and you see the Reddits and like it got scary. I was like, holy cow, these people are into it. Like, what is this all about? And then, you quickly learn that it's a very complex story and that people typically don't get it. So I took that a little bit as a challenge of, I'm gonna get it. I can read. I'm gonna get it.
I can read, damn it. Yeah.
And I immediately understood the challenge. and that's why, I'd be curious to talk to Steven Erikson. I don't, uh, the kind of renegade attitude that it takes to
Yeah.
write something like this, I am very down with. I do like that.
Yes.
And I think you and I, at one point, I compared him to Virginia Woolf, which is a
Yeah.
silly comparison, but I love Virginia Woolf in part because at the time when she wrote, she didn't care about run-on sentences and what, she just did it. And it's a kind of a middle finger to the literary world of I'm going to write what I want to write, regardless of what's in. And of course, Erickson has that same middle finger vibe. But it was interesting because as I read it, and I didn't do a lot of research other than just knowing, whew, people are passionate about, his work. But I knew there was something a little bit about, gods and mortals, which I was drawn to. I love mythology. And I
Yeah.
did like that aspect. There were certainly aspects of it I liked and moments that I liked. And I did read that this started as a screenplay, which kind
Yeah.
of makes sense when you think of descriptions and, duh, of course it would be highly descriptive, but it almost felt more theatrical to me. Like I got a real, which then I laughed to think about, can you imagine the logistics of putting on a play of this? Like the costume changes and how many
I,
characters? Like would I as one actor be like 25 characters, So that kind of gave me a giggle, but
and
it
Amanda
felt
Rake turning into a dragon. That's what I. It's like
right.
all like it shoots out of him. Yeah.
But it was something about the point of view felt theatrical, like in the way that there's all this happening, and then all of a sudden you'd have this what felt almost like a soliloquy, like this private moment on the stage for one character.
Yeah.
And so I didn't expect that. I didn't, and I don't know if that was just my impression of it, but there were moments where I could get the feeling a little, or at least get the dedication to it, and the finesse that it takes, and the craft that it takes to have all of this stuff happening in the world. And yet here's this one moment where this one character is, questioning their humanity or something.
Right.
And
Dealing
and
with
that
very human
really,
moment.
yeah, those were beautiful. And of course, as an editor, I wanted more of that. And it sounds like there's maybe more of that later on in the series.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I did, and maybe that was the point. It was to not, maybe he's like withholding a little bit of, makes the reader want a little more. I don't know, but there were certainly moments where, I was completely lost, and I mean lost in terms of what character is this? It doesn't help that characters get new names or, like, and I
Yeah.
think that
New
has to
name.
be, yeah, Steven Erikson's middle finger to a little bit of like, I can write what I want. You're
Well,
still going to
that's
read
what
it,
I
aren't you?
love. Yeah, that's what I love so much about that Virginia Woolf comparison. I don't think that it's outrageous at all. I think it's very, very appropriate because I've also been reading Mrs. Dalloway very slowly, but in the first I don't know, 20 pages, we're in and out of that many people's heads as well. Like
Right.
we're we're Mrs. Dalloway for a minute, and then we're back at her house, and we're the trees. She's like talking about
Hmm.
how she's the trees, and
Hmm.
at her house while she's on the street, and all these different relationships she has, and which is great because it gives that great character moment with her. Well, that character work with her to get me kind of invested in Mrs. Dalloway. But then I'm ripped out of her head, and I'm like this random couple sitting on a bench, and the
Hmm.
guy is like, I don't know if he's important or not, but he can't ever look away from his newspaper. And suddenly, and then out of that, and his name starts with an S, and I don't know what the fuck. Anyway, what you were just describing with Malazan, where we're shift. I feel like you're right about that it is a big middle finger. Like, I am going to shift into other people's heads out of nowhere, and I'm going to give you some of the world, but this isn't London, so I can't just say Big Ben. So Virginia Woolf, like the world building is like done, and so she can just kind of allude to some things in London where Steven Erikson has to like, but he's still like alluding to to them, like he's not
Right.
he's still acting as if the reader will figure out what Darujistan looks like or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
no,
I don't know if anyone else has compared the two, but there are
you
definitely
did.
some, and now that you're mentioning it, Virginia Woolf was very descriptive, and I I thought about, a fun drinking game, reading Malazan as drink every time there's a color. You'd be wasted. But Virginia Woolf is the same. I mean, everything's green and there's a lot of color in that as well. So it's perhaps an unfair comparison, but it does seem like they're very similar, and Virginia Woolf has perhaps a little more brevity than Steven Erikson does.
Well, I think
But
it's
the
yeah,
same renegade style of I'm going to write what I'm going to write, and
yeah,
my reader will find it.
and people do. That's like, and I feel like it's and Virginia Woolf is considered. I'm not very good at this, but she's considered modern, right? Because she's
Mm-hmm.
before 1950. Is that
Mm-hmm.
okay? So she and Joyce modern.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then so like
And
post what were you gonna say?
I was going to say James Joyce is another good example of like
Yeah,
what we were just talking about.
yeah. People
I
throw
mean,
Ulysses across the room every day. They're tossing that book.
right. I think I just heard another one hit the wall.
There it goes. Thunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and then the postmodern novelists that I have read so far are Don DeLillo, Thomas Pynchon, whatever, and David Foster Wallace. I think it is gets thrown into
Hmm.
that category, and it's so similar to this. And then reading Virginia Woolf too to see the similarities between those, it's really interesting. Um, it's a really interesting bag Malazan is. I feel like it's postmodern literary fantasy. And so you've
Hmm.
got the descriptions of like an epic fantasy that are going to be fucking bewildering regardless. But then you've also got this like not give a fuck, sometimes stream of
Hmm.
consciousness writing. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I think
Yeah.
that it's maybe that's where like some of this frustration comes from, like we were just saying about throwing Ulysses. Like I know that I quit reading Malazan book 5 for like 3 months or something, and like I couldn't, like I hit something. I was like fuck you, dude, fuck you,
Mm.
like you're not gonna
Hmm.
fucking do this to me anymore.
And here we are, and you're in a homemade shirt in a love fest for Steven Erikson. So I don't know. What is he like magic? It's like some kind of spell he puts on people.
I know, and I have tricked Summer into like that's why I keep like tricking her. I told Summer today that Steven Erikson was going to be on the podcast, and that's how we got here.
Any
He's gonna.
minute now, he's gonna join. Any minute. We'll just wait.
Do you have any characters that you liked that you remember
Mm.
specifically?
I liked the characters that I think had the most growth or complexity. I liked Sorry. I think I read the first, I don't know, 4 or 5 chapters twice because I thought that would help. And then I realized it didn't really help. So I didn't, I just blew, like whatever, let's just keep reading. Um, so I think in a way I like some of those early characters just because maybe I understand them a little more. But I liked Sorry a good bit. I liked that character. I liked the Wax Witch, even though it was like just a kind of blip in time, but I loved the kind of myth of that, the unstated parts of, you almost want to be like, hold up,
Right.
tell me more. I wanted to know more about the Wax Witch, and
It's a great
um,
scene. That
it's a
yeah.
great
Yeah,
scene.
it
Like,
is.
so I liked some of the characters I liked the most. They weren't really major characters. It was just something that was dropped in that was so curious. I kind of wanted to know more about them. But I liked Sorry. Um, I liked Piran. Is that how we're
Yeah,
gonna say
yeah.
that? Um, I
Ganolis.
liked I liked the dragons. Like I liked the hounds. I mean, I don't know if they count as characters.
Yeah,
Um, I liked that, and typically I'm gonna be honest, not a dragon gal,
yeah,
typically, but uh, I mean, I love the whole Moonspawn was probably my favorite thing. Just the idea of a moon that you could see. It kind of had like the Little Prince vibe. Again, maybe not a good comparison, but the fact that you could see characters on a moon. Um,
yeah,
and I liked probably my favorite tiny little section was the talking about the title, when Gardens of the Moon was actually in the book. And I always love those kind of moments where you get the section where the title's in there. And um
I think that's
loved
what the
that
sorry
image.
talking
Yeah,
to Crocus. Yeah,
right. Of like the dolphins will be free and that it was underwater gardens, maybe actually. Is that right? That the Gardens of the Moon, it was like they were maybe underwater. I don't know, maybe I read
yeah.
that wrong, but
The moon's like green. Yeah,
but I really like that. It was just this beauty. It was like the quiet moments when it's like loud, 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 and then there's this kind of quiet moment where a character, we get some point of view from the character that's very human. And that's typically what I bring when I read fantasy is typically a criticism of how fantastical, which of course is not really fair to tell a fantasy you're too fantastical, but I think if you want to have an audience, you have to humanize it. And it sounds like maybe Erikson did that more in later books, but in this first one, I wish there were more of those moments, really, of those human moments, because I felt like perhaps it would then be a little more accessible for a general audience, but clearly that's not what he was going for. He did not care about a general audience, I don't
right.
think. I mean, um, so much of my experience reading it, I kept coming back to this idea of collaboration because writing is so solitary. And one of the reasons why I'm an editor and a coach and everything is some solitary time is fine creatively, but to me, it's so magical when it's a collaborative creative process. So inherently, if I'm editing, I'm coaching, whatever, there has to be another person. And I find that energy just um, really inspiring. So it made me think about the collaboration that was at the heart of the book. And
Yeah,
is that maybe why he wasn't as worried about general audience and a readership and all of that is because he had this co-collaborator that made it real and legitimized it and validated it. And, I don't know, but it made me wonder, is that where the confidence comes from of this world and just to have someone else there saying, no, no, let's do this. This is, to get excited about it. And I wonder if that collaborative loop is perhaps what infused him with a confidence of, I'm just going to write this. And um, I don't know. Or maybe he's just a very confident writer,
well,
but
I think it's incredible you came to that because I know that on the Kanata
Mhm,
podcast for
mhm,
the first one they did with Steven Erikson, that at some point he said that like a lot of like jokes he was writing to Ian
mm,
Esselmont, his
mhm,
co-creator, and so like, but now that you the way you brought that up, now I'm thinking about it on like on a like a bigger level because I know that like with me and you like you work on my writing and like when
mhm,
I can talk to you about stuff that's in my world and you'll
mhm,
know what I'm talking about. And so like
mhm,
that collaboration like it does legitimize you. You feel like,
mhm,
oh, there's somebody out there who I am writing to or
mhm,
for, or they're gonna see it, and know
Hmm.
what the fuck I'm talking about. So yeah, like if you have somebody who's like, yeah, they are as actively participating in it,
Hmm.
and they started out as gaming, so it's like they're just playing the game together, like for because I know they don't like live near each other anymore, but they can just
Hmm.
continue playing forever. So yeah, no,
Right.
that's a really cool point.
Well, in a way, Steven Erikson is a business card for having someone, bringing someone into the world that you're creating, whether it's an editor or coach or just someone that an early reader, because I do think it gives you a confidence that you can't get any other way, and it's hard to describe other than it's like a world that you build comes alive when someone else looks at it.
Yeah.
And I, I, who knows if that's the case here, but to me, I felt like, could he really get that level of confidence without it being a collaboration? And I don't know. I doubt it. But maybe he'll have to
That's
show up to.
yeah. Where are you, Steven Erikson? Let me message you again. Uh, all right. Well, I wanted to talk to you, Summer, about okay. So I know Steven Erikson doesn't like to drop text into a section, and I think he said this on 10 Very Big Books, um, in the editing process because it disrupts flow. Now, you as an editor and me working with you, I know that you do this, and we've done it, and then we've smoothed it over. So yeah, I just wonder if you have any thoughts on that specific um, idea of like where this author uses this technique, and what you agree or disagree with in that approach.
Well, and I want to go back and hear what he says because I don't understand how you would avoid moving text around. Um, I really don't understand because if it is a dedication to the organic process of writing, then why publish? Like, if you're loyal to, nope, this is the way it came out of my brain, that's fine. But if it's not the way that makes the most sense or, whatever, then you got to move it. And so I'm not really sure what I really don't understand. I don't know how you wouldn't move it
Well,
if
he's okay with
something,
rewriting that, but not plopping text in.
well, this is what I'd say to that.
Let's hear it.
He is clearly not as interested in the efficiency of writing. I'm going to just go out on a limb and say that. Whereas if you are concerned with the efficiency of in writing, which an editor is, you're going to, if there's a paragraph sitting there and you understand that moving it, two paragraphs later, for example, builds the suspense, gives the reader a moment to sit in the unknown or something. If there's a legitimate reason why you could rewrite it, but if you could move the text and it works with some massaging of transitions, I don't know why you would be against that. So I'd really invite him to tell me more of what what he has against that. Now, if it didn't work, then of course you wouldn't do that. But there are times when it works just fine. It reminds me the I'm gonna forget who said it, and so I won't even guess, but a writer who said, it's like killing your darlings. I'm blanking on who said that, but it's kind of just moving your darlings. You're not killing them if you just move them to a new seat, like this darling might do better in this chair. And so, you move, it's like Goldilocks. And I don't know why you just no Goldilocks, you have to leave and you're going to bring in Snow White to sit in the chair. Just put Goldilocks in the chair where she goes and and everybody's happy. So I guess I don't necessarily understand why you would rewrite it unless you are, maybe he is a little more concerned with that organic kind of nature of writing. Um, but I also have many questions for his editor. Many questions. Like, WTF? Like, what did the manuscript look like at first?
Yeah, I want to know that. I want to
Like,
know
did
that
they
too.
make any changes? It's interesting. Elizabeth Gilbert, Eat, Pray, Love, well-known author, just had a book that came out, and one of the first reviews I read of it said, "Oh, it's a great book." Clearly, though, um, she's an established writer because if she was a debut author, lots of things would have been edited.
Mm.
And that's really how it happens. Like, once you're established, you can write whatever you want. I don't know in Elizabeth Gilbert's case, but a lot of times, authors, whatever book they sell, well, then maybe the publisher's like, okay, I want another book. Well, what do? They go dust off the manuscript that's been in the drawer for 20 years, and then they publish that. And you tend to get edited less and less, the more popular you become. But this was his first book. And I'm just so curious who edited it, if they made any changes, um, why they didn't make other changes. And I'm wrong here, clearly, because this is a very well received book. So I know that I'm shooting myself in the foot by saying all of this, but it's still fascinating to me that an editor read this and was like, yeah, that looks good.
Well,
Really?
I wonder if the editor was a I wonder if it's a genre thing. Like
Yes.
I wonder if that's like what you typically work on. Is it this kind of dense fantasy or science fiction? You
Right.
know?
So yes, that and I think that is probably the case. Whoever edited it, it was a fantasy, editor, which is
Yeah.
fine, and that's business choices. Some editors do that, and some editors, I try on purpose not to do that. I don't want to be, I accidentally early in my career got a few romance novels back to back just because it was word of mouth, and I had to work very hard to get out of one. I didn't want to be any particular genre. Um, and I didn't even just want to be nonfiction. I really wanted to be able to work in a lot of different genres. So, yes, I think a lot of it is my priorities are more general audience, that kind of thing, whereas a more, high fantasy editor. But I still maintain that even if I were a straight up just fantasy editor, I would have some notes. I'll leave it at that. I would have had some notes. Just maybe a few tweaks here and there,
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, it's like he, when I read Dune, which is this is like a big it's very similar. The only thing that I would say is different is Dune has a very I would say overall digestible plot. And
Mhm.
so like, hey, hi. Oh, okay. Love you. So like Dune is very
Was that Steven Erikson and you have him in a closet?
he hates you right now. He's like, let me out. She said she had notes. But can I see them? No. So the Dune is like when I read Dune, it was for me a frustrating, rewarding experience, and like a lot of science fiction from that era. I feel like I just read one. It's called Babel 17 or Babel 17, whatever. Like the ideas and everything are like so cool and like fucking mind blowing. It's like reading it can lead you into like kind of the headspace of like taking hallucinogenic drugs, which is
Mm-hmm.
for me who can't take drugs, it's really cool. This is the only way. It's just super dense, difficult science fiction fantasy books. Um, that'd be Thomas Pynchon's books are like that too. But
Mm-hmm.
this Babel 17 book was like about a language that changes the way you perceive everything, and so your concept of time changes. It's kind of like Arrival, that movie. I don't know, but these ideas are really cool, but the writing is very dense and they don't explain a lot to you, and you kind of like there's almost a kind of like fucking attitude you have to come to the table with, which when I started Malazan and Dune, I was not in that place. Like my science fiction was like I need Ender's Game or
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Like make it easy for me. I don't need
Mm-hmm.
to know what the whatever does or what the
Mm-hmm.
science is behind the thing. And that's like a whole genre is hard science fiction,
Mm-hmm.
military sci-fi, and this is like a military fantasy. So it's like that's where I have this like weird feeling, man, because like I could say the same thing about Dune, where I'm like, I don't need I don't need this part right here
Mm-hmm.
about there's like, and it was cut from the movie. There's a scene with somebody, a character in the desert dying, and I don't personally need it. But that moment was important to the writer because he was like, an ecologist, or he had studied
Mm-hmm.
um, environment and so much. And so it's like there's a part of me that's like, as far as the editing question goes, of like, could this have been edited more, edited less? It's like with Malazan, I almost think that it's like it depends on the attitude you come to the table with, which is that you could say
Mm-hmm.
that about anything, and it's a kind of an easy answer, I know, guys, but I'm talking to the Reddit people over there. I'm talking to you, Animander Rake 4269. Um, uh, I feel like it's the attitude you come to the table with, um, and when I come to Malazan with that attitude, which is all this shit's gonna happen and I'm not gonna understand a lot of it, but I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and then in retrospect, I'm like, I love it.
Right.
That's what happens every time, Like in Gardens of the Moon, it wasn't like that for me. Gardens of the Moon, when I finished it the first time, I was like, I don't know what the fuck happened, but I remember some of those moments,
Mm-hmm.
and I want more of that.
Mm.
But like a lot of the shit at the end, like the Jaga Tyrant, I
Mm-hmm.
was like, this is gonna be the point. This is gonna be the
Right.
whole point, and it wasn't the
And
point.
it wasn't.
It
No.
didn't matter at all. And
No.
it was another moment where he was like, "Fuck you." Yeah, I know. You
Yeah.
think it's the point. It's not. None of
Right.
it is the point. The point actually is, fuck you. A little
Right.
bit,
Right.
which I, respect 100%. But anyway, that's where I get into this like, this conversation's kind of like putting me in a fucking LSD questioning everything space, because I'm like, I feel both things so much. I'm like, oh yeah, well we could have cut the description of the cliff so that I could have
Mm-hmm.
spent some more time with Whiskey Jack.
Right.
But then it's like,
Yeah.
you fucking okay. There's a moment where Adjunct Lorne is like undressing,
Mm-hmm.
and this is one thing that like really got me excited about Malazan when I had like this weird realization. But like, there's a moment where it's one of my favorite moments in the series. In Gardens of the Moon, she's undressed and Paran comes to her room, and
Mhm.
he is uncomfortable. He's like, oh, sorry, and
Mhm.
she doesn't give a fuck.
Right.
There's it, and I cannot like describe um how all that was conveyed, but he did it. It was very lean. It's a
Mhm.
very lean section of text where all of this nuance is communicated in like a few sentences of dialogue, and maybe the adjunct turns her head a certain way, but and I'm not gonna like get it out and read it right now, but like it kind of, and I feel like that is missed on a first read through
Mm.
because of all the overwhelming detail. These little, but I mean, you picked up the wax switch part, and that's another
Mhm.
one that I feel like is like
Mhm.
this. It's this like page, or it's like a
Mhm.
couple paragraphs that are super lean, like almost like Hemingway, like tight writing. Show don't tell at all,
Mhm.
but you get it all. It's all right there on the page. Um, so it's almost like I'm going to give you all this, and I'm not going to expect you to retain all of it, but then I'm going to give you this short little thing, and like it's almost like this, like a guy torturing you kind of, and then giving
That's
you
what I was gonna say.
little
Yes.
rewards.
Yes. Exactly. It,
I
I think
know.
that's exactly what it is. I think it's torturous. And I wonder, like, if those moments that you're talking about, those nuanced moments, they're so
Like
lean,
brilliant. Yeah.
brilliant, or is it relief, John? Like, is it your brain like, oh God, I get this, a wax witch, sure, I can picture it. I almost feel like he bombards you so much on purpose so that when you have those moments where you can breathe, like, you come up above water and you can breathe, they feel just euphoric. But it's only because you've gotten it a little bit. So, you know, maybe he makes us better readers because it does. It's one of the few books where it's okay to not get it and keep going. Like I've never had that sense before. From the moment
Yeah.
you're reading in school, you're doing your summer reading in a book report, we're like taught that you read this text, ingest it, regurgitate it, move on. If you don't get the text, you got to go back and read it again, right? Because you're not taking it in. Um, and he kind of flips that upside down. So I wonder if, because like I said, I went back and reread the first few chapters because I was like, oh, okay, I must have just, my brain was all over the place. Let me try this again. Nope, didn't make any difference. And that's that whole idea of, in order to read his works, that you have to get over having to understand what's happening is crazy to me, but also necessary. You do have to just like, you're like a
Yeah.
duck and it's just rolling off of you and you don't know what's happening, but you just keep turning the pages. Um, so maybe he does do, it would be really interesting to do some kind of experiment with people, like some reading comprehension pre-Malazan and post of not Gardens of the Moon, but just, read some other short story, then read Gardens of the Moon, and then go back and read the short story. I bet you anything he does enhance our brains uh, because he's like teaching us how to read in a new way.
Yeah.
Um, and it almost makes the
Oh yeah.
things that stick really stick. Like I think I picture it's like, you're driving on the highway and all these little bugs and they're hitting the window and you're not paying attention to all the little bugs, but then when you hit the crow, then you're like, whoa, I hit a crow. Right. And that's what I felt like. There were a few times I hit some crows. Otherwise, I just kept driving. I can't really see. I'm just making little holes to look through, but I don't know what's happening, but until I hit a crow.
Yeah. A great raven. Yeah.
A great raven, right? Not a crow. That's ridiculous. A great raven or a dragon.
Well, I mean, that's why I knew what to do with Babel 17, like that
Mm-hmm.
book, like where it was just like it's a short book too,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like So it almost is like, I don't know. There was a certain, to a certain degree, I was like, this isn't worth me not understanding because it's so short. But like you said, like I've been trained by Malazan to like be okay with things not making any sense. And then so for me, okay. So I've read more books in the series which and that I think are better books
Mhm.
than Gardens of the Moon. But I'm wondering if you got this with Gardens of the Moon. Where did you did you feel like after not understanding for a time that there were sorry, that there was like a big moment where you were like, this paid off? Because I didn't have that in Guards of the Moon myself. I But in the other ones it does. So I feel like that might be what's missing from this one.
Mm. Is this a ploy to get me to continue reading in the
No,
series?
not at all. But
Um,
Steven Erikson will be here next time.
next time, right, I'll show up. Boy, I'll read it and show up, and I'm sure he'll be here. Um, I, oh gosh, I mean, was there a payoff? Was there a moment when it paid off? There were moments when I felt like this is what it paying off might feel like. There were there were moments, again, those like poetic moments that felt very human. And I saw in those moments, I saw, oh, this is where Erickson probably gets better at doing this exact thing more frequently, and that will pay off. Um, so I think I liked his writing more than I liked the book, if that makes sense. Like I can tell and I'm sure he's learned, every book's better. Um, and I can tell he's, a very good writer. But I think probably, the part of one interview that I listened to with him, he said, you're not in control of your characters. And I loved that idea. I love that he, is talking about that, but it makes me almost like I wanted him to be in control of the character. Like, who's in control of these people? Like, this is just, there was no kind of circus master. It was just a little too out of control. But I like the idea behind it. So I think I can be glad the series exists, but not necessarily be its ideal reader. I'm glad it exists. I think I love renegade fiction. I don't care what genre it is. I like surrealistic fiction. Like I like it when, we're pushing the boundaries. We're not writing to an audience. We're not writing to get published. I love that. In fact, I would much rather read the manuscripts in the drawer than the ones published sometimes because it's just, I don't know, it's just so much closer to the magic. Um, so I like that, and I feel like he's the same kind of writer. I don't know that, but I feel like talking to him about the magic of the creative process would be really inspiring because just little things like saying you're not in control of your characters. Um, it alludes to the fact that he just lets it kind of happen on the page, which is a cool idea. But again, it all depends on your goal. And if your goal is to be understood, have a wide audience, et cetera, then you maybe don't write like Erickson. If your goal is to build a world, that it takes some work to get into, or you're um, trying to turn the writer reader relationship on its head a little bit, then I think he nailed it. Um, but I always think of it as, the writing is like the feedback loop. And if there's writing to write that no one reads, and I think that's a certain kind of magic, a certain kind of therapy. But then there's the writing that you want to be received because some writing feels like, oh no, I need it to be heard and received in order for it to get that loop. And I think it's different kinds of writing, different you can do both kinds of writing. Um, but I suspect again, going back to having a collaborator, it was as if he wasn't interested in having a wide audience. Um, and maybe I'm wrong. And again, I'm not his ideal reader, and I know that. Uh, and that's okay. We're all growing, right?
You're growing into somebody who might read the rest of the series.
Oh boy. And I do think I will say he's funny. That's how I know he's a good
Oh yeah,
writer.
it's
And he
hilarious.
says he's not in control of his characters, but he is certainly in control of the tone. Like a masterful like he's funny. Like some stuff was really funny. The bone phone, like come
Mm.
on. That made me guffaw. I don't know if it was supposed to, but that was pretty funny. And like, the freaking puppet. Like,
Oh
that
yeah,
I mean,
fucking
that's when
my
I got to
favorite.
that, I
Love
was like,
Hairlock.
"Oh, he doesn't care if I get it." That's when I was like,
No.
"Oh, he doesn't he kind of wants me to get confused and get lost. Like that's the point. And he's going to laugh at me while it happens." And that's kind of what I feel like happened. Like I walked into the experience. I walked into a fun house knowing it was a fun house and every mirror I looked in was not going to be reality. And yet I still got lost and frustrated and banging to get out of it. So
Totally.
I totally fell for what he wanted to do. But he's funny. I mean, he's definitely in control of what the reader is feeling. And it's just curious that he was okay with the reader feeling so uncomfortable for so long.
Curious, curiouser and curiouser. I at one point, then this is kind of funny. That like a way that I um was able to get through certain like moments of frustration in the series was um when I started to look at it as vignettes,
Mm,
and I was like, okay, I finished a vignette, not a
mm,
chapter, because they're
right.
fucking huge. But
No.
like, yeah, you can't like finish a Malazan chapter and then like, oh, hold on, I'm just gonna finish this chapter, then I'll put.
Right.
And you're like, no, I'm gonna be on this chapter for
Yeah.
days. But when I looked at it as like the moment with the bone with the bone phone and the moment with the wax switch, the moment with
Mm,
adjunct Lauren, like and I don't know when I started doing that. It was probably later in the series, but as kind of like something you pick up, you sit down on the couch, then you read like a short story collection almost.
mm-hmm,
It like is what, and I think that's what he was writing it as anyway. It was kind of like a short story collection that has
mm,
like an overarching arc, but
mm-hmm.
that definitely helped me uh get through the trauma.
But that is what is so funny to me. Or it's funny, it's not the right, interesting, is that when people talk about this book, the series, they talk about it like it was a war. Like you were like, oh, the only way I got through that,
It's part of it. Yeah.
and and I've noticed, like, if you ask people, have you read this? They launch into like, oh God, I was 21 years old when I read it the first time. The second time I was 30. Like people know exactly where they were in their lives. It's like, military experience. It's like this, really intense, like in the trenches with someone. And then if you read it in a group, it's like these people are just bound for life because they read Malazan together. And it's
Yeah.
this really interesting, like people talk about it like it was torture that they would do over and over and over again because they can't stop, or it felt so good to be tortured in that way. Or it's like, and I keep chewing on that because I can't understand it. Is it what you learn about yourself reading it? Is it like knowing that you did something super challenging? and you got through it. I don't, it's a really fascinating from like a human psychology perspective. I am so fascinated by the following and how people talk about it, and they do talk about it like a war, like, "Ooh, I didn't think I was going to get through that one. It was really dark, but I just focused on those vignettes and I got through it." It's like always just
Right.
they talk, it's like this heaviness when they talk about it, but they're so proud. And people love to tell you how many times they've read it, and distinguish. Like, now I've read this full series 3 times. He's only read the first 2 books. She's read it 7 times. It's like this this ranking system, this hierarchy of fans. It's fascinating. I don't know of any other kind of following like that. And like people get you know, people get in arguments about how you pronounce things, and like it's fascinating. How does an author, through, marks on a page, make humans that devoted? It's really fascinating. It's just marks on
Yeah.
a page. That's all it is. It's just this, and yet we're like, oh, we're, trudging through it together. We're gonna do this. I don't, it's really amazing, and
It's
it's
almost
inspiring.
I feel like you have to read the first two
Is
to
that
like
so, John? Is that so?
you have to read the first two to talk about it, because that's like when I know, convenient. But that is when you kind of there's like a because book one is like just straight the trenches, and like
Yeah.
with moments of and on a reread it's definitely better, but but book two
Oh boy.
on a third time. Uh, Book two is when you kind of get some of the characters, some of what the story is going to be. And I know that like when I finished Gardens of the Moon, I was not I was not wondering about too many things. Like as far as like it didn't do the thing that a book where you want it to pull you and be, have you curious. And it was book two and three is where it was like, okay, and now we actually have, which I know that Erikson got, like, he hadn't written a sequel until he
Mm,
got published
mm,
after 8 years of having Gardens of the Moon like just on a shelf, and so like he published Gardens of the
mm,
Moon, and then he was like, okay, and now I can actually make a series out of this. So it kind of gave him like a little bit even more like he had that confidence of like I'm just gonna write whatever I want, and I'm gonna
mhm,
publish what I already have because I was writing it, to my friend and for myself, and but now I've got like this definite like readership, and now I'm gonna show what the actual shit's about. And there is a lot of merit to what you say, Summer, because like there is a group of people who say that the story doesn't start until book 6.
Holy cow. Okay. Okay. If I'm at a party with you and we start talking and having a conversation,
The worst guy to talk to.
how long are you gonna, if I'm just, you don't even know what I'm talking about, how long are you really gonna stand there and talk to me? Because eventually I might say something profound. Book 6, how many hours does it take to read the first 5 books? I'm just curious. Like, wow, that's a lot of investment in something that may or may not pay off.
It pays off.
So I hear.
It's great.
Right.
I'm gonna just caption this: Malazan fanatic speaks to skeptic. That's what.
Well, and again, I'm glad it exists, and it it's interesting that as you can read at the same time that we're having this conversation, there's all this data coming out that our attention span is getting shorter and shorter. I'm curious what Erikson would say about that because that's clearly not what is going to be good for his readership. But, um,
Right.
I wonder if Erickson is the antidote to social media. Like we have this kind of goldfish brain where, we can't stay focused on things long. Maybe we just need to make everyone read Gardens of the Moon to to kind of slow down and keep their attention on something for longer so that we're not just, constantly being distracted by things. But, you know, I, I can't think of 5 books and then it really starts to pay off.
I don't believe that. I don't. But that
Okay.
is what that is. There is a school of thought out there that says book six is when, and book six to me was probably the one that like kept me up at night the most as far as like a reading experience goes.
Okay, let me ask you this, John.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be a jerk here and say, is it the writing in the book, or is it the fact that you have invested so much time in it at that point that you need it to pay off? Like,
No.
no?
It does actually.
Okay. Okay.
It does get to there are there's a female character who becomes the adjunct, for example. This
Hmm.
isn't really a spoiler. This is
Hmm.
Perrin's sister.
Hmm.
Um and so like
This
when
is
sh
not the adjunct in Gardens of the Moon you're
no,
talking about.
new
Oh,
adjunct. This
oh,
That
oh, I'm
adjunct's
getting a
dead.
spoiler.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, you saw the adjunct die. You might not have comprehended it, but it
I
happens.
think she died. I'm not sure if she's
She
going to
died.
stay dead.
She
Okay.
did. Okay. Well, she
Oh,
might come back to life. I don't know,
right. As
but
a
there's another.
puppet.
Yeah.
Or someone could put her remains in a bag and carry them around. That's another possibility.
Okay. Yeah. And then what happened with those remains in the bag?
Oh, that's a good question. That was a guy whose name started with a B, like Belarus or something. And he carried, and then someone, I don't know what happened to the remains in the bag. Someone came and like turned them to dust or something? No, that's the magic dust later.
So, there are a lot of B names. So forgive me, Reddit,
Oh.
Malazan, uh, t- terrorists. Um,
Oh, they're
but
gonna have a
I
field. I'm
don't
gonna get
remember
hate mail.
his name, but I do know that it was in the bag. It's Night Chill is in the bag.
Oh, that's a
Night
good
Chill
name.
is his lover, and
Uh-huh.
her remains are in the bag. And he comes to fight Tattersail
Uh-huh.
because he's like, "You got to come with me."
Uh-huh.
And she's like, "I'm not coming with you." And they get in a weird fight, and because there is like magic around them,
Uh-huh.
something, her opening her warren makes shit go crazy,
Okay.
and then their souls get shifted into each other, into the unborn child inside of a woman in like 3,000 years ago, is what happened.
Yeah, I didn't catch that at all. Wow. I
So
like
that
mine
all three
better.
of those people are inside of a baby, an unborn baby. That there's some really, we need to give this
Wow.
section to um the right to life people, really. To
Mm.
you know there might be three people in there, real
Three.
people.
And that's a baby in the future?
This baby's in the past,
Uh,
growing. Yeah,
uh,
yeah, they went back
okay.
through a Warren
Okay. Okay.
that I
So
think it's
we
because
might
the
know this
Solana
baby.
Mass
We might
Warren.
know this baby, is what you're saying.
Well,
But
then Perrin runs into
yeah.
somebody named Silver Fox
Uh-huh.
and knows that it's Tattersail,
Mm.
and this is an 8-year-old child who was once his lover.
Okay. And this is the right, right. Okay, I did catch that.
Yeah.
And something with the baby like grows slowly or quickly or something. It
Yep. Yep.
ages.
Ages fast because it's feeding off life force of its mother. like fast at an accelerated rate.
Okay. Okay. See, it's funny because I thought that was it, and I was like, no, that can't be his like lover child. That'd be too weird. That's not too weird. Wow.
Look,
Yeah.
see that shit, man, is like
Mm,
frustrating as hell, but also like kind of fucking cool. Like, what the fuck? That was all there, and it was there. I just missed it, and I
right.
had to like look it up and like read it, and then look it up and
Right.
read it. I don't even know all of it still, like. So I don't know. There's
Right.
something to be said for the amount of the density in the text
Well,
of like there's a lot there.
and I suspect that's why people do get such pride from getting through it is because of
Yeah,
the
right. It's rewarding.
the dopamine it pays off. Like it's like a marathon and then you finally finish it. So I get why people get that sense of accomplishment, but and I do think it's so dense that I think once people read it, they kind of give themselves a pat on the back a little bit of, I I picked that. Oh, I picked it up the first time. I bet there are those people who are like, no, 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 I picked it up right away.
My friend, he
Oh,
doesn't he doesn't
sorry.
act like a dick about. No, no, no. He doesn't do that though. I just a guy at work. Like he's
Oh,
super smart, but like I was like, hey, you should read this. And like I talked to him after he read it, and he's
mm,
like, "Oh yeah, and this and this," and he's saying stuff, yeah, that I don't even. It's
mm,
Caleb. If you're out there watching, Caleb, good job.
mm. So he's like a Malazan savant. Well, yeah.
Yeah,
And I wonder what Erickson reads. Does he ever talk about what he reads on interviews? Because I'm
he's
gonna
mostly sci-fi now, I think, and just regular
I wanted it to be
contemporary.
paranormal romance. I wanted you to say he was a big paranormal
Oh
romance
my
fan.
God. Okay, so there's this author that Steven Erikson does love, called his name's Glenn Cook,
Uh-huh.
and the dude, like all the military stuff in this book,
Uh-huh.
it's pretty much just that in this guy's
Oh,
books,
wow.
and that guy when he talks about shit that he was doing like in the 90s, he's like, I was watching Power Rangers, just writing shit, just like Malazan, just like he
Oh, wow.
loves Power Rangers. So yeah, I
Right.
also wish paranormal romance was a thing with Erickson.
That would be amazing. Yeah. Those are dedicated fans. Like you don't mess. That is the one fan group I'm not gonna mess with them. It's all
Yeah,
great. It's all literary. It's all an achievement. I'm not gonna mess eh, with
he
that
was
group.
so handsome.
It's so
He was
handsome.
so handsome again. Wait, sorry, me and Aaron are reading that The Housemaid, and that's
Mm, mm.
commenting. It's not paranormal romance, but
It
oh, my
flirts with
Siri
it.
kicked on. What are you doing, Siri? Get out of here.
Maybe Siri has something to say about Steven Erikson. Did you get it, Siri?
Of course.
Well, let me ask you this, John.
Ask me.
So you have read the books. I'm sorry, how many times?
All 10.
All 10,
Just
how many
one
times?
once.
Oh, just
Uh
once. Okay.
and the for Gardens of Moon I've read 3 times.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I had that straight. Um, so Erickson says, steal what you love. What
Yeah.
have you stolen from Steven Erikson?
There's a moment in book 3 where Quick Ben, you remember Quick Ben?
I do. He's
Cool name.
bald.
Yes.
I remember that.
Yes. He's a wizard, and
And
he gets. Go
he
ahead.
didn't I read he was based on was there a Ben Quick character or something from I didn't maybe not. Okay, keep going. Keep going.
No, yeah, you're right. Something. There was some interview, but
Yeah.
yeah. So okay. So in my book, Junkie Jack, there's a there's a moment in book 3 of Malazan, sorry, where Quick Ben gets pulled under the ground by the like these hands just pull him
Mm-hmm.
through the
Mm-hmm.
ground
Mm-hmm.
out of nowhere, which shit like that happens a lot in Malazan. And
Mm,
anyway, I completely like I read that scene and then I wrote
mm,
it in Junkie
mm,
Jack, my book, my short
Mm.
story. So, but definitely I think the thing that I rip off the most from Erikson is like the idea of uh kind of like weird far out shit. It can happen anytime, and it kind of gives me that hit to write it the
Mm-hmm.
same way that it does to read it in his books. um like that, like we were just talking about that whole situation with Silver Fox, like that weird crazy layered shit. Like
Mm-hmm.
I would like normally in a book to be able to get it faster.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I'm totally fine with the way that Erikson presents it because of the layered like way in which you have to dive for this information, and I think that is a rewarding experience. But when when there's shit going on, like this child has three souls inside of it 3,000 years ago, that kind of stuff makes me like get really excited because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's incredibly like it's incredibly unique
Mm-hmm.
um fantasy shit, and kind of metal too. Like, yeah, I don't know how to describe it any other way besides metal cool fantasy shit. But
Mm-hmm.
that's the stuff that probably the most has inspired me from Erikson. And so it's like there's enough of those moments happening throughout every book that like when the series starts to pick up for me, it's like it's just an added plus. Like I was already here suffering so that I can get to those moments that are like in, Haruki Murakami's work where like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know, the teenage girl is like licking his cheek,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not like sexual. It's like, but it's like a weird fucking moment. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
why? And he's like,
Right.
well, it's all there, but I'm not going to tell you. And you're like, okay, shit. And so like there is reread potential, but there's also like the feeling that like what David Lynch movie gives me.
Mm.
Anyway, that's the shit that I personally lift from Erikson, is
Mm-hmm.
to have like fantasy elements, but like it's more like it's like a surrealistic
Mm-hmm.
uh, kind of approach to
Mm-hmm.
writing,
Mm-hmm.
and the middle finger thing.
Right. Right. Yeah, I can see that. He does mix, like he doesn't seem to be particularly concerned with being in one genre. Like I don't get this sense. I
Right.
honestly kind of assumed it was very kind of formulaic fiction, which it's not at all. There's definitely a lot of other genres mixed in there. And then places I thought it would go, it didn't go. Um, so yeah, he does seem to just be okay making up his own kind of genre. Not too many people like him. I think David Lynch is probably a good comparison in terms of how their brains work, that there's no bounds to what could happen at any point. Like,
Right.
and sometimes that is what's frustrating because if anything is a possibility at any moment, then certain circumstances get frustrating because you're like, well, if there was a bone phone, why didn't we're just now using the bone phone? And
Right, right. The same thing with Lynch too, really. I mean,
right,
at a certain
right.
point you're like, all right.
You're like, yeah, sometimes it starts to feel too convenient. Um, but I do think, one of the things I tell writers the most is, trust your reader. You have to trust your reader. And Erickson is maybe I like don't trust your reader so much when it comes to, he just assumes, or maybe he doesn't assume that the reader is going to get it and he doesn't mind it, but certainly doesn't seem to have concerns with that. Like he just drops in a phrase that ends up being very significant, 100 pages later. you know, it's it's pretty fascinating that I don't know. I'm not typically a rereader of fiction,
Yeah.
and I don't like rewatch. I'm just that's not how my brain, unfortunately, is more of like give me new, novel experiences. Um, so I don't typically go back and revisit. But how is it that he makes people want to revisit it so much? And I guess it is the density, or if you do get to the point where you have the payoff, then you want to go back and see what you missed or kind of piece it together. Um, because I know this whole horde of readers is that's saying all saying the same thing. It's must be
Horde.
legitimate, It's not that like people want to go back and reread him, and he's given them that want to. So that's pretty noble. Like how amazing if you're writing something to know that not only will it be successful in the sense that you have a wide audience, but that they will revisit it over and over and over and,
Yeah.
have these, kind of spars with one another about how you pronounce certain things or, the no, that wasn't the sword. That was the sword that so and so had, like these fights about swords and names and uh, it's pretty amazing that I wouldn't have thought it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really I like I like when somebody throws like a random name at me. Um
Mm.
and I feel like there's a lot of that in Malazan.
Mhm.
There's a lot of italicized phrases and stuff.
Mhm.
And I really like that stuff. It tends to give me that little spike of like of mystery.
Mm.
Um but I don't know. I feel like in Malazan, it's like there's so much of an experience with, and that's almost part of it is how many of those random drops and random names are in there. There's nothing else that does that shit to me quite that way.
Well,
And
then you
so
must really get off reading Malazan.
that's why that's why I come back to it is because there's nothing that did it like that. Oh, I'm sounding kind of weird, but that's fine. That's fine. I'll own
It's a
it.
safe space.
There's nothing. Nobody did it like that for me. Um, where there is like so much overwhelm and these little moments of like, yeah, you heard this name and it was weird and it was like Kachain Shamala, and you didn't understand. And you were pissed, but then you found out that they're T Rexes with swords for arms
Mm.
and something like your inner 6-year-old really
Mm.
came out and was like that all I care about is how cool that is. And but then you're right back in like, okay, here's the politics that will completely baffle you and they don't even matter. They don't matter.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
not even part of the plot, like, anyway, that's what I feel like. Like I read something about Pinchon when I was reading through one of his books, and it was like if you treat it like it's an acid trip, then you're gonna enjoy it more.
Mm.
And that was kind
Hmm.
of eye opening to me. It like with this too, where I was like, that's exactly how Malazan is. It's the same way where it's like it leads you into like all of these different so it's all these different areas, and one of the main themes of the series is compassion. So like the whole idea of like not looking away from pain is like the heart of the whole series. And so because of that, it's almost like there's almost like a meta element of like I'm going to put my reader through pain because that's
Mm.
which could be a convenient way to write it off, right? You could just say that and then like, kind of get past some of the criticism, but I think that that is kind of part of it. Like because you go into this, like you said, like it's almost like like you're in the trenches with the other readers. Like you go through this whole experience that is multifaceted. It's not just pure enjoyment. Like I just said, I just read The Housemaid, and it was just pure enjoyment.
Mm-hmm.
It was. Have you read that one?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it's just a thriller. It starts and it goes, and she's like, he's handsome, but he's handsome, and you're like, and you're like, what's gonna happen? The whole time you're curious, and that's what you want in a book. You want it to fucking entertain you and completely escape. I feel like Malazan is like, you're not gonna escape.
Mm.
I'm gonna give you little glimpses of it, and then sometimes it's gonna open up, and like you're gonna have, and you haven't experienced that yet, Summer, but you will. But um,
Book six. By book six, I'll experience it. Well, I'm not heartless, and your very eloquent description of how it makes you feel is the first thing. That is the first time I've been like, maybe I will read more. That compels me. That idea of like, the 6-year-old and all of that and the compassion, like
yeah,
that's the theme of it. That's
I
surprising to me.
I know, I know,
But I do like
weird,
I I I still say I can see the glimpses of that in this first book. I can see and I can appreciate what he's saying about empires and government and the kind of geopolitical realm. I found all of that, though it was a lot of details and I did not grasp many of them,
right,
that being the backdrop, this like empirical drive and what that says about the individual human, and that it's um
right,
like the that living forever is torturous, and like I liked all those kinds of very human based elements of it. um so I can see how, if there's more of that, and it sounds like that there probably is, that would be quite compelling. But I think what you just described is really beautiful. Um, and, I think as a writer, if there's one person who describes your work the way that you just did, like that's a successful piece of writing. So, the fact that it kind of did that for you, I definitely, reading it can see its influence even on your writing, having read your writing. Um, and I'm imagining it's very wide influence on other writers and very, inspiring, and his level of finesse, that he can go from this macro level to this very, this micro level of one individual human who's, grappling with their own humanity. That finesse is probably what I liked best about it. I do think, yeah, it gets lost, in some things. But the idea that you just presented, that maybe the work and the pain is a part of what you take from it,
yeah,
is
for sure,
interesting. That's off the page. That's like experiential fiction shit, which is really interesting to think about if that's what he's attempting to do. That's like taking it to a different level. So you may have just you talked me into not hating it. If Baby John is excited about the T-Rex arms, then who am I to criticize it?
oh, Moon Fortress T-Rex arm sword T-Rex. I mean, that's my selling point with this series.
It's good to know.
Isn't it cool? But
Well,
yeah, that's what I'm gonna. That's what I'm calling the video. Summer, me talking my editor into reading more of the Malazan books. That's what.
well, yeah, well here we'll see. We'll see. I'll say another thing I appreciate about it. So,
Yeah,
I love mythology and the metamorphosis that tends to happen in mythology. And I love fairy tales. And, it's fairy tales are typically shape shifting and these nomadic plot lines and grappling with these harsh truths. And I felt like there's a lot of that in fantasy anyway, but there was a lot of it I felt like in this book particularly. I don't know if he was at all inspired, but do you ever read two books at the same time and they have absolutely nothing to do with each other, but they are forever yoked in your brain because you read them at the same time and one
Yeah.
informs the other. And it's one of my favorite things in the world when it happens because I call it literary synchronicity because it's just like, how could you read one without the other once you've read them both? So, as I was reading this, also reading a book, a nonfiction book called From the Beast to the Blonde on Fairy Tales and Their Tellers by Marina Warner. So it's this history of fairy tales and then explicates, some kind of well known fairy tales. But what was interesting about reading those two things at the same time is it, fairy tales are so kind of geographically kind of based and on certain circumstances, of the human existence and the lessons and hardships that incur as a result of that. And I felt like that was very Malazan. Like um, the fact that it couldn't have existed anywhere else. It was a very, even though it was like this, seemed like this world where anything goes and like you can get pulled down into the ground and you can, you know, dragons pop in and you can see moon spawn and all this kind of stuff. It still couldn't have happened in any other world, fantasy world. It had to specifically be this one. And I felt like that was interesting and fairy tale like in
Mm.
its like brutality sometimes, like the scenes with the dragons and stuff, like it was so brutal. And I really thought there would be more of that. So the fact that it was the way it was peppered throughout made it kind of more disturbing when you actually got to those parts. But um, it felt like there was a large kind of fairy tale element. And I want to read one quote from this book because as I read
Yeah.
it, again, I was like, this is Erikson. Um, it says fairy tales reveal how human behavior is embedded in material circumstance, in the laws of dowry, land tenure, feudal obedience, domestic hierarchies, and marital dispositions, and that when these pass and change, behavior may change with them. So I thought back to this idea of Erickson and you're not in control of your characters and he's got this map and everything seems it's like the map is where I imagine Erickson building the book. And then he just sat back and let everything happen in the same way that like this quote that it's all about like the circumstances and from those circumstances what rolls out from that. And it felt like sometimes Erickson wasn't in control of those circumstances, which I did like. I felt like he wasn't the sometimes the writer is like this oppressive force
Yeah.
in writing. And um, I did not feel, except with a few of the humorous elements, I felt like I could kind of hear Erickson in those. Not that I
Yeah.
know him, but from what I've heard him screaming from your closet.
You're
Um,
right.
but I felt like he did a good job of just like building the world. And that's where I felt kind of his effort. And then from there, it was like the characters just kind of doing their thing. And then this circumstance led to this circumstance, and that it had that kind of fairy tale vibe. And then from that were those harsh truths, that idea of, not looking away from pain or sadness or whatever, in the same way that fairy tales are so brutal sometimes. Like the not the Mother Goose ones. I'm talking like the, putting children in ovens and stuff, like the
Yeah.
brutal fairy tales. There was a little bit of that and I liked that very much and I hope there's more of that kind of in later books, but I thought that was kind of an interest. I did not expect. I knew there were gods and mortals, so I expected there to be this kind of mythology element. Um, but I didn't feel the gods as much as the mortal. It felt more
Yeah.
like the gods were there, but they didn't have the same influence that they would have had in mythology. So that was interesting to really
Very
play
interesting
with all the
choice. Yeah.
same levers of mythology and fairy tale, but yet do them all in your own way. Was again that confidence. Like, the man is confident.
Yeah. Well, and I think that like a lot of the scenes that are strange and things are just kind of happening. A child, well, three people getting sucked into a portal, essentially thrown
Mm-hmm.
back in time into an unborn child. That feels very mythological, but also feels very, fairy tale esque. It
Mm-hmm.
does not feel like an epic fantasy, like
Mm-mm.
Game of Thrones. Uh, it doesn't feel like something in Game of Thrones. It's very like this choice is made, and then
Mm-hmm.
this is the result, and this is the consequence, and like and this good person is punished for good behavior, whatever. That's kind of
Mm-hmm.
the formula, which is more like realistic or whatever. And I feel like there's a lot of realism in Malazan, but there's like so much more of an element of like play of like,
Mm-hmm.
well, no, we're also like playing. We're playing with the world. We're playing with things can just happen. Mother Goose can just fly out of the sky, or whatever it is. These people getting baked into a pie, isn't that what happens?
Mm-hmm.
Something, like I could totally see that in a Malazan book, and me being like, holy shit, that's cool,
Right.
juxtaposed with the tone of, all these soldiers going through traumatic situations, with this magic that no one can understand because that's how I feel like magic would be. But anyway, no, I think that's an incredible point.
Yeah. I did. I really I appreciated that. Because I do love fairy tales, and I think that
Yeah,
that's a question I'm gonna save for my conversation with Steven Erikson. I would like to
that's
ask
right.
him if there's any kind of fairy tale mythology influence, maybe more fairy tale than mythology, but
What's that?
uh,
Oh, no, he
oh,
said there's nothing, none of that,
oh,
what you just said. He's still pissed about the notes you have for his
they're in
book.
red too. I should say.
Well, so hey, here's what I'd like to know now. We're at the bottom of the hour, and it's late where you live. Um, First of all, have you been convinced to continue in this series? You don't have to be.
I'm thinking. This is me thinking. I just finished it today.
Oh my God.
And
This
yeah.
is not the time to ask this question to anybody.
Yeah, I just got out of the trenches, so I'm not like gonna enlist right away. We'll
Right.
say that.
Okay. All right.
Um, I'm definitely intrigued by the fandom. I'm intrigued by like his brazenness is intriguing. Um, if I had a lot of time on my hands, perhaps, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, John.
Well, I'm proud of you for sticking it all the way through Gardens of the
Thank you.
Moon.
I was waiting. I mean, it took how long to get that? Thank
Good
you.
job. You got the
Thank you.
badge,
Thank you. I can
Private.
go tell everyone now. I have read Guards of the Moon one time.
Yeah.
And for that, you should show a little respect,
Yeah,
people.
you're
Yeah.
respected. Definitely can't say you've read 10 books in the same. You ever
No.
read 10 books in the same series, I wonder?
No. No, that's not true. The Mandy books when I was a youngster.
Okay, fair.
Lois Lepard, Mandy. I read all of them. There were dozens.
Damn.
And yes, they were a delight, a romp, if you will. And I knew what was happening. I knew all the characters. There was a little magic. Um, but yeah, the characters didn't like get new names and things that
They
made it a
name
little
Sultan.
tricky. But yes, so yes, I will stick with a long series if that's your point. Though the older I get, the less I do that, to be completely honest. I don't know if I feel like I'm running out of time. That's very, very depressing. But I'm, yeah, kind of constantly wanting the new, and I rarely go back. So, but we'll see. Maybe I'll give it a few chapters and see what the next book has.
Well,
Because
okay.
I can see moments of greatness in one Steven Erikson.
All right. Okay. Well, I think that's a good note to end on. I think that you know we've we got a little bit of a hook in you at least for the next 9 books.
Oh, good God. It's like
What
a
9 and
rusty
10?
hook. It's a rusty hook with
It's a rusty hook.
gangrene and
Gangrene. 9 and 10. You'll feel good after you get hooked,
will I?
by the rusty hook because yeah, compassion. But book
Okay.
9 and 10 are like one book, so they're both.
Oh, well, yeah.
Here's
But
book
they're
9. Here's book 9, and it's this thick, and then you have book 10 is there. So that's like it's like one book. So really, you only have 8 books to go, right? Yeah, it's 8 books.
I mean, why are they so long? You have good eyes. That is very tiny.
1,276 pages.
How long is the character list in that one?
Oh.
You
Do
know,
you
I
have another? Do you have another
it's
hour to read it? To read
yeah,
the
I'm sure it'll
character
just take an
list.
hour. It should, yeah, just take an hour. And as someone who has trouble with character names anyway, like in just a normal fiction, this I was this was tough to hang on to. There's a
Yeah.
lot of names, a lot of people.
Well, at least now you'll be better with in other books. That's what it's doing.
That's
It's
right.
is it's
He's
helping you.
training me to be a critical reader.
That's right.
Thank you, Steven Erikson.
Well, Summer, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on, talking about Gardens of the Moon. I'm glad you read it, and I'm glad that you spoke your truth about it.
Mm,
It's not an easy ride. So
it's
I'm
not.
sure somebody out there, lots of people out there, will empathize with you, and I definitely do. So I appreciate that. I don't particularly love watching a video where people just say what they like about a book. So I that this was definitely an engaging conversation to have both. I mean, I really feel like you gave both. You didn't just
Right.
criticize Gardens of the Moon. I feel
Right.
like you gave a really eloquent um, description of what you experienced, and I appreciate that. And that's what this
Well,
podcast's about.
well, thanks for tricking me.
Yeah, be quiet, Steven Erikson. But he says he'll come on next time to talk
Okay.
about
Make
your
sure you
notes.
feed him dinner soon, it's getting close.
All right. Thanks, Summer.
Thank you,
Bye.
John.
See you next time.
Bye.